So if your business has sales tax nexus in a state and you're not even aware of it, there can be some pretty serious consequences financially for your company. So let's say you had Nexus in a state like California 2 or 3 years ago, and you had no idea. Let's say you racked up $1 million in sales into that state over those 3 years. All of a sudden, you could owe like close to $100,000 in uncollected sales tax. Plus, you have penalties and interest, and that penalties and interest can be between 25 and 35% of the original tax due. So, most businesses don't just have 100K laying around. And I'd say that 100K is pretty typical for a state. We've seen it literally run into the millions of dollars. We've seen businesses need to go out of business because they literally cannot afford the uncollected tax bill. And the thing is, the state's going to get paid. So they will put a lien on your personal property, on your business property, on your personal bank account. They will literally just pull funds from whatever bank account is attached to the social security number of the owners or officers, or attached to the EIN of the business. So you really, really need to be careful if you have sales tax nexus in a state that you are collecting and remitting. Unfortunately, figuring out if you have a sales tax responsibility in a state is not super cut and dry. It's not super simple. There are some really simple sales tax nexus examples, like if you have an employee in a state, if you have an office or a storefront in a state, then yeah, it's pretty clear that you have sales tax nexus there. But there are a whole bunch of ways that you can create a sales tax collection responsibility that you might not even be aware of. And we see this all the time at TaxValet. When we bring on a new client, we go through a really deep scrub, looking in every single nook and cranny to try to figure out, is there some potential exposure that our client is not aware of that we want to try to address, right? And one of those big areas is actually advertising. And most people don't realize this, but advertising online or on the radio or on a billboard or TV can create sales tax nexus. And there are a few states that say if you just put on a Google ad or Facebook ad, that's going to create sales tax nexus. I personally think that's ridiculous. That is a really, really low bar to cross. And I think the threshold should be much higher. But nonetheless, the auditors have legislative authority to enforce those statutes and to force a business to collect tax. And again, if you disagree, you can go through the process to push back, to try to litigate. But if you lose, they will literally go to the bank and just transfer an assessed determination. They're just going to pull the money from your account directly, which is crazy. Another mistake that we see businesses make is using these free online tools to help them figure out where they have cross economic nexus thresholds. And this is really risky for two reasons. The first is they're using these tools to help them figure out where they have nexus, and they don't realize that the tool is just looking at economic nexus. It's not considering physical presence and all of the other ways that you can get sales tax nexus. And so oftentimes they'll use the tool, they'll get a list of states, but they won't consider where their contractors, their employees, their advertising, everything else might be creating that threshold. So that's the first problem with these tools. The second problem with these tools is that they're just not accurate. And if you look at the logic and the math that they're using, they're not considering the full complexity of the economic nexus statute. What do I mean by that? Well, every state is going to be different regarding the time period that we look at the transactions. Is it current and prior calendar year? Is it the last 4 completed calendar quarters? Is it the preceding 12 months? There's all these different ways that the states want to look at the transaction and sales volumes. And they also differ on what they want included in the sales volume. Some want total sales, some want taxable sales only, some want exempt and resale orders and marketplace sales to be deducted. And these tools do not explain that, and they don't have a way for you to consider that. And so it's very common to get false positives and false negatives, which ultimately means if you're missing a state, that could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, like over several years. And If it's giving you a false positive, great. Now you are collecting tax in a state. And once you have a permit, you're obligated to collect and remit accurately. And you're just opening yourself up to continued exposure that you didn't need to before. So, you know how those economic nexus tools don't take into account physical presence? There are a whole bunch of ways that physical presence can create sales tax nexus for your business. One of the ways that I think so many people don't even realize is storing inventory in a third-party warehouse. So if you have fulfillment centers that you're working with, storing your inventory there, even if it's just like for a day, can create sales tax nexus. And this is hugely problematic for Amazon FBA sellers. Amazon FBA, you'll ship your inventory to them. They will move your inventory across the United States, and you might have Nexus in 20 or 30 states overnight. Also, having a server, like if you have web servers for your website, storing that in a state can create sales tax nexus. I know it sounds crazy. Attending or displaying at trade shows can also create nexus. And just keep in mind, I'm saying it can create nexus. The rules are going to vary in every single state for what the trigger is. How many days are you making orders? Are you doing marketing? It's all going to vary on a state by state basis. And this is why it's so important to work with someone who deals with sales tax every single day. Because if it's your business and your finances that are on the line, and all you need to do is make sure it's being done correctly, you want to work with someone where this is their bread and butter. This is the only thing that they do, and they are not just sort of Googling it as they go. Another area of nexus people don't really realize is working with affiliates. So if you're working with marketers who are creating TikTok videos or blog posts and they're linking back to your website in order to promote your products, that will oftentimes create sales tax nexus. Working with contractors. And again, the devil's in the details. What are the contractors doing? How many days a year are they working? How involved are they in the sales and marketing and promotion or delivery and installation and maintenance of the product or service? All of these things need to be considered. And if it sounds like insanely complicated, it's because it is. Like, it's absolutely insane how complex our sales tax system is in the United States. Renting out equipment. If you rent or lease physical property to your customers outside of your home state, you technically still own that equipment, so you now have a physical presence there. The amount of leasing companies that we work with that do not believe us, and we have to like sit down and review all the statutes in every single state so that they will see like, yes, you've been doing this wrong for the past 30 years. It's frightening. It's frightening for everyone, because I certainly hate when I come into contact with a business that is accruing sales tax exposure and they just don't even realize it, right? So this is why working with a tax pro is so important. And I think the last area where we see so many businesses making the mistake of not knowing that they have nexus there is being registered with the Secretary of State. If you're registered with the Secretary of State, that is going to create a sales tax collection responsibility by and large. It's creating this like administrative nexus. So as a business owner or an officer or some other responsible party, you need to know that you are directly responsible and accountable for all of the unpaid sales tax. And this is true even if you're an owner or one of the owners and you're not involved in the business at all. You still have a fiscal responsibility to the business. And that means that if the business doesn't pay the sales tax, they can come after you directly. There have been so many times with CEOs who are, sorry, not CEOs, owners, or maybe like CFOs who are like not really involved in the business as much on a day-to-day way. They are held responsible for the unpaid sales tax, and they go after their personal assets. So if you don't want that to be you, if you want to make sure that your business is collecting and remitting sales tax the right way, everywhere you're supposed to, and you want to get good advice, not advice from some free app that could potentially destroy your business, consider working with us. My company's name is TaxValet. You can learn more at thetaxvalet.com, and we've got a free consultation where we'll chat, learn more about you, give you an opportunity to learn more about us, and just see if we're a good fit for each other. All right, hope to hear from you. Take care.